If you haven't started work, experiments, learning on AI today, I think you're already behind because your competition certainly is.
That was Michel Mol, a 10x collaboration manager and expert in artificial intelligence. His knowledge of the AI space is astonishing. In this video, he covers a lot of ground, from exciting use cases, promises versus reality, impact on the workforce, emerging business models, and how to prepare for the AI era. He even talks about using AI to design a bridge that looks like a swan. If you want to learn how AI is changing the way businesses operate, then keep watching this video. Let's jump in. So there's a lot of hype going on with artificial intelligence. What's currently going on that we should be aware of?
Well, of course, artificial intelligence has been around for decades, but the recent hype that through tools like ChatGPT and the efforts of OpenAI are now coming to the spotlight are centered a lot around generative AI. Gen AI being the AI loosely defined that actually creates content based on input of all the knowledge of the world around us that we already have. And a lot of that knowledge is today, of course, encoded in the web, but it's all, of course, also encoded in our books, media, movies, university courses, etc. But internally in corporations, the corporate guidelines, the procedures that are described, product descriptions, in case of pharma, say, all regulatory procedures that are taking place, aspects of research. So what AI and Gen AI are doing to the world today is accelerating quite a bit. It's coming to the spotlight now because it's now able to automate a lot of grunt work. And the funny thing is that grunt work, as we knew it before, say from an industrial revolution perspective, is changing. What we considered like highly intelligent, manual or human required activities until recently are now also becoming automated by AI.
What are the top 3 things business leaders need to focus on to get the most out of AI?
What you see right now is loads of organizations starting up pilots. They are mostly in an R&D phase, but they are actually seeing value creation already in many domains. Say the more down-to-earth examples now are the automation of many front office and back office functions. We see deployments already of customer support being supported by generative AI in the sense of call centers that are getting less and less human involvement. Also, marketing content generation, say automated generation of emails. And there's this case where if they let the Gen AI answer a customer support question, so not a sales question, right, but support, that they see a very high conversion rate in the upsell and cross-sell already. There's all the back office functions as well that companies are automating today. One of the easiest to comprehend examples is in coding, where you have tools like Copilot assisting coders who are now able to get up to speed quite quickly, are able to generate code a lot faster. And it's also easier to incorporate that into teamwork and into the corporation's rollout of their programming. The big thing is that this front office and back office automation, it's not just a small efficiency play, the real major impact. We're hearing that in pharmaceutical companies and law firms, but also this call center work that I described in recruitment, everything that has to do with matching. So matching candidates to job openings, matching internal drug development at a pharma company to regulatory constraints and policies for every single geography that they're working in. This is a lot of work today done by humans. Today, we'll still have a lot of humans in the loop, but the value creation through AI, the gains that we're already seeing in a lot of these pilots are tremendous. And having covered that, say, front and back end part, we're also seeing now that AI will play a role in true transformation, in the sense that not doing what we did before in a much more efficient way, which of course already has big impacts on the workforce, but also in creating new types of approaches to market, new approaches to product design, new approaches to marketing. And this is still quite nascent, but many companies are already exploring these ideas and see tremendous potential. And then we're maybe talking not 2 to 3 years out, but already within 5 years, a lot of these transformational changes are expected already. To give a couple of examples of those, and we can go into the details, of course, of what these specific companies are doing. But you can imagine that, for instance, in industrial space, where machinery is already connected for a large part through the industrial Internet of Things, that all this data being captured and being analyzed is giving new insights that could immediately tie into product design of components, of engines for transportation, of parts of machinery in factories. So where IIoT already had the promise of helping companies with preemptive maintenance, which is of course very costly, both in the manufacturing as well as in aerospace, as well as in other transportation areas, it now is also able to tell the engineers in the product design divisions what they should change for the upcoming new prototypes. Then these prototypes don't need to be built anymore, because they are digitally created in the computer and they are tested with AI. This is a really big thing where AI can help us to use virtual data sets. Like, you could say, AI, design a bridge for me that looks like a swan. The AI will make sure that it's solid, that it won't fall apart. And the AI will drive 1 million cars and trucks across it virtually. So that will be quite sure that it's consistent. You could have it 3D printed, for instance, if you just have the raw materials, the resources. And this is also a common knowledge that this is today already being applied in pharma. AI is being applied there in a transformational way, both in the drug development as well later on the clinical trial stage. Drug discovery, drug development, clinical trials. I think it's quite recent, just a couple of months ago, that 2 teenagers through AI discovered a root form of cancer, which they then, together with the pharma company, are now tackling to get the drug developed for. There are, of course, tons of limitations on what both pharma or financial services companies can do because of regulations. But theoretically, it's possible to test these drugs on virtual patients. They could create 1 million patients in a computer with all types of demographics, ethnographics, medical history, then test these drugs on these virtual patients, which would save, of course, tons of time. So pharmaceutical companies are expecting to gain a lot of progress in the research into Alzheimer's, into cancer, into diabetes in the next, say, 5 to 8 years, and then really quickly be able to do the clinical trial process afterwards, which would be, of course, spectacular as to the advancements in medical research.
How do you think the promise of AI versus the expectations are going to kind of match up in the next 3 years?
Well, opinions vary a lot as to that. You read about in the press or talk about at shareholders that are aiming to incorporate AI as a core strategic element of their company, like technology has been done, right, in the past couple of years. You have these tech-centric companies that are saying, we're not an airline anymore, we're not a financial services company, we're a data company, or we're a tech company that works in this space. You see that they are actively deploying a lot of this technology, working together with the tech vendors, and are making a lot of advancements in this space. They see a lot of risks, they see a lot of caveats, but they can actually paint a quite decent picture of where this is going quite credibly. So what we end up with is a lot of hurdles that prevent us from actually realizing this potential that is in that promise you mentioned. But these hurdles all, at this point, from our professional perspective, seem solvable. So it's either regulatory constraints that always follow innovation, right? Like we saw with Uber, regulations get adopted to maximize value creation. But in some cases, it might take a long time. Specifically, if you take a look at financial services or pharma, they both of the industries agree that there's quite a stable ecosystem in place. But this ecosystem actually, with banking licenses required, with the pharmaceutical processes like an FDA in place, etc., it's harder for startups to enter this market. But at some point, we see that the expectations, both in financial services and in pharma and in recruiting, and as we've seen like the last 20 years in automotive, there are startups that can and will disrupt this space. And that could be smaller companies, but it could also be Amazons of this world who are moving into these new areas, backed, of course, with a lot of capital to counter any regulatory issues they may encounter or any failed pilots that may arise where they learn from more quickly.
Is that
But
also why you potentially see Microsoft joining forces with OpenAI, and there's a lot of the large pharma companies are kind of joining partnerships or somehow with drug discovery startups? Are the large organizations trying to kind of help pull through these startups, get them past these hurdles?
you see both Microsoft, Google, and Amazon partnering not only with startups, but especially lately, also with multinationals, with Fortune 500s of this world, and joint development. So, for instance, we see that they're co-developing. So there's a large effort in knowledge sharing. Both Microsoft, Google, and Amazon are working with top companies in the automotive space, in companies in financial services, in banking, to tackle a couple of the thresholds that are not so much regulatory, but are of a different nature. When you look at AI, of course, a lot of content, a lot of knowledge, our collective knowledge is being utilized. Many companies are hesitant, and I think rightly so, that if they enter their content into that sphere of common content, that their intellectual property may be compromised, reused, or in some cases that the end product might not be resellable. So if you create code using AI and there's code in there in the end result that belongs to somebody else, you might not be able to deploy that code. You might not be able to resell the end product if that's also software based, right? If it's embedded in your hardware, there might be litigation up and down the value chain. So what you see now is there's litigation. There's a lot of deals being struck as well. It's a parallel process. And what we see now is big tech aiding, facilitating the corporations to get to a safe model where they have a lot of the large language models on premise. So they'll have the data within their own company, and that doesn't need to be physical. It could also be a virtual private cloud that they set up, which is protecting their companies from their IP leaking back into the cloud where they don't want that to happen. So for instance, where companies, the first directives that were sent out to employees were sometimes don't paste anything into ChatGPT, nothing at all, because we're afraid our knowledge will leave the corporation. What they're now doing is they're creating these environments where employees can safely trial and test all these new technologies, which of course gives them a competitive advantage. If you previously had to go to a data and analytics officer and ask for a SQL query to give you your reports, now people within sales, people within marketing, people in supply chain and logistics are empowered through AI to do their own queries. And if the companies set up this safe environment together with the big tech and with consultancies, they are able to do this while the risks are contained, and they can still get that competitive advantage and speed to market.
Mhm. And you're kind of talking about areas that there's still room for improvement with AI. So what are some other big areas where maybe promises aren't kind of matching up with what's actually happening now?
Sometimes you see generative AI producing content that looks really valid, but it's actually made up. So the AI is more concerned with creating the output than with it being able to validate it sometimes. So those are concerns that companies have. And the big issue there is, of course, the explainability of AI's outcome. If you deny somebody a loan request as a financial institution, you'd better be able to explain to that individual why you turned them down. You need to be able to explain to the regulator why you turned them down or approved it. So, and if the AI is, like in many cases, still a black box as to how it came to its outcomes, there's a problem. And ways companies are circumventing that, because they recognize the problem, is they use AI basically to triage. So if you're an insurance company and you get a lot of claims, which previously all had to be manually checked, is you have the AI now automatically either escalate or de-escalate certain claims to humans. And what happens is that the human specialists are able to put more attention on the tougher situations that actually need more knowledge. So this actually transitions into a bit of what may happen with the workforce, right? Where we see a lot of grunt work, repetitive work being automated, and the definition of that grunt work growing by the day to include high-level functions that we always thought would need humans. We hear people completing their PhDs saying, well, all that I've studied in the last 2 years has become redundant because the AI can do it now. I need to move to the next level. So we're hearing companies looking for new types of talent, needing to reskill their current workforce. And that what is going on is that they're looking for people to be focused more on creativity. The AI able to build that bridge that looks like a swan without it collapsing. So you need people to actually take care of that creative part. We can have AI generate books. We can have AI create music. We can have AI create Hollywood movies. But the thing is, even we humans don't know what will make a blockbuster movie. We don't have the recipe for a musical hit. So while the technicalities are under control, true innovation for a while now still requires a lot of human input. And that would be the area that companies are focusing their recruiting on now, especially people highly capable of working with these technology tools, working in small, tight teams. The teams will be smaller. There'll be a lot more dependency on each other, less room for failure, which is different than less room for experimentation. So really different skill sets looming. And of course, we are hearing all around and reading through everything that's being published that this will have a great impact on the type of education we will need.
Yeah. And so how should companies, and let's be frank, governments and everyday people prepare for the changes that AI is going to bring?
Maybe to start with everyday people, I'd like for people to just try it out. You know, a friend of mine wrote a book, Artificial Intelligence is Nothing to be Scared of. And we see this like with every new technology rising, right? That there is misused. There will be a lot of types of deployments. Same as with the internet. You can use it for the good and for the bad. But I would advise people in corporations to try it out. I have conversations with AI in my car. I linked it to Siri, and now I just ask it questions to see where can this take us. I ask it to write the opening line of the best novel ever. And you get things like, when the clock struck 13, I knew that my grandfather hadn't been lying about the secret society of timekeepers. The world would never be the same again. And then you add something to the prompt. This is where the human creativity comes in, and it becomes even better. And this is how you learn. This is when your imagination catches fire and you see how you could use this within your corporation. So the people within companies now having AI generate their marketing and sales emails are saying it knows much better than our sales rep what the client's customer history is, what their potential next action in buying will be. It's uncanny how high the ROI is on these types of implementations. And so I'd advise companies to start with a lot of pilots, to work with consultancies and big tech in creating a safe space for their employees to experiment, rather than send out directives, don't use AI, we're scared. Also set up like center of excellence to share knowledge, best practices. We see companies organizing hackathons. We see companies giving their business units leeway to work with central AI units. And it's like with innovation, it's all like dotted reporting lines. You need somebody in charge of AI that works with the business units, that works with your supply chain guys and gals to actually reduce inventory, reduce logistics times. And it's spectacular what both transportation companies, supermarkets, and automotive are seeing as a result in their first proof of concepts there.
You talk about all the business cases that are going on and you give some best practices. With all the information out there on AI, how do companies stay informed and kind of reduce the noise?
Staying informed, the first part of your question, I would, coming from the more, say, traditional consulting companies where we used to take years, months to assess and create strategy, it's much more about agility now, about staying in touch with developments on an ongoing basis. So I would recommend companies to do short sprints of gathering knowledge. What's your competition doing? There's a lot of public knowledge out there that can be gathered. What are they doing in other sectors that could be applied to us? So to have your intelligence, say your competitive intelligence, really in touch with current developments, because this arena sees changes every few weeks, right? Every couple of months. So having an extension outside of your own business to really closely monitor what's going on, both in your market as well as in AI, tech development, and spectacular use cases that you see arising around the world, that would be my recommendation. Do short sprints of knowledge gathering, translate that into your own use case, experimentation, and create a safe environment for your own organization to try out this type of the developments.
So wrapping up, what are the 3 takeaways that the audience should get from this interview?
Well, if you haven't started work, experiments, learning on AI today, I think you're already behind, because your competition certainly is, or most of them are. So I would immediately start, put somebody in place, gather insights from what's going on both in your own sector and the rest of the world. And 10x could help you with that in a quite efficient way. And the third is I would actually start up pilots that are relevant to your own corporation as quickly as possible to get the learnings and then to be able to assess what to scale up.
As you can see, Many companies are already benefiting from deploying AI across their organizations. And 10X is helping those companies gather industry and expert insights to develop best practices and create a competitive advantage. We'd be happy to support you as well. If you'd like to learn more, please reach out by visiting 10x.com and clicking the contact button. We look forward to speaking with you.